Steve, we're here checking out a game called Winter Survival. This is by Drago Entertainment, and they're the folk who do some of the simulator games. So this is a bit out of their wheelhouse. This is a survival game, of course, where you're in the winter and you have a bit of a story to work through, but really you're just trying to survive. Deal with your insanity, or hopefully your sanity, and piece together little scraps from around the environment, fight off some of these wolves, some of these bears, and hopefully get on with your life at the end of it. But it is worth saying that this is in early access. There is a really interesting tutorial, and that's one of the first things you're met with, of course. The tutorial for some of these games can be quite frustrating, but I found this one actually stepped me through the processes of each of the different kind of items in a way that made sense, and it stuck with me. Okay, well, here's how to craft. I've done that a million times. It's kind of an easier one. Okay. But here's how to defend yourself. Here's how you can throw a spear. Here's how you move some of the environment around. And that made a lot of sense. But that's sort of where the sense kind of ended for me. Before I get into my half, though, what was your opinion on this one, getting into it?
I thoroughly enjoyed the tutorial. It was good, it was well done, because we do play games and we haven't got a clue how to do things, or the game mechanics and the controls. And what they did with this one, they actually broke it down into loads of different segments, like you said, hunting, building, crafting, all that kind of thing. But then when you get into the game, it's a shame that, for me personally, half the stuff did not work. As in, it did work, but it was later on in the game, as you do get like a sense that you hit the top D-pad and it kind of scans the area, and then you can find materials for crafting. So when you you have the introduction, which is another weird one. It was like a puppet that sort of tell a bit of a story of that you're going on a trip, a hunting trip or something. It kind of went a bit funny, and then you kind of wake up in the middle of the wilderness and you have no equipment with you. So obviously learning the crafting and then going out and you see all these branches on the floor, I could not pick them up. I found that I could pick rocks up, but then I was overloaded with weight, but I could not access my inventory to drop any of the stuff. And it was getting to me like a bit of a grind, because it kept crashing on me as well. And I basically played a couple of hours and I actually restarted from the beginning again. And bearing in mind, I did play with a controller, which did have the accessibility for controller, because it come up with the prompts of LB, A, and those kind of things. But when it was like chopping wood, which it says push the Q button, it was not mapped out on the controller, so I still had to use part of the keyboard.
No, the controller woes is a thing that we normally don't see an issue with on Steam when the game is fully released. I have hope that that'll be resolved. This is going to consoles as well, and they've pushed back the release date by about 1 week. That might explain some of the issues that we're having, but again, I did have some crashes too, and it is early access, once more. That is kind of what you get sometimes, but stepping through that and kind of troubleshooting it, restarting the game, that should have gotten through a lot of the other bugs that don't seem to be resulting in a crash. I had crashes a couple times and I couldn't figure out what the trigger was. I can't provide feedback in any sort of meaningful way that way, but I do speak to the anger of, okay, there's a ton of these things on the ground. Why can't I pick that up? The rocks are kind of the opposite. You see them solo, but you can't pick that up. They're only available in kind of like a little zone, a little area. You see them splotched on, kind of like a big ink pad. But that's kind of where I'm conflicted on how this game looks. For the most part, when you're running away from a bear or a wolf or otherwise, the game looks really nice. But then you get into some of these other moments where it's just does not make sense. Looking at the ground, for example, what differentiates these sticks from other sticks? And then when you get into some of the different crafting elements, that's where I'm met with more of the real issues that hold the game back, in my opinion. When I'm trying to construct something and I cannot do it in time because I'm freezing to death.
Yep.
So very, very early on in chapter 1, that's where we are, is you're tasked with running away first. You fall off a cliff, you lose your bag. Now I'm trying to get my backpack. Okay, that's fine. I do that. But then I'm kind of met with my next issue, which is your clothes are torn, and they're not doing very well for the lack of heat there is. So I'm starting to freeze to death.
Yeah.
And I need a little bone, a small animal bone to make a bone needle so that I can patch myself up. But I don't have any weapons to get that bone. I can't make any traps to get that bone. I can't even really think about it too long because I will eventually just freeze to death, and it doesn't take very long. But that is my issue. I feel like there's something bugged in the setup of that.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the saves, you really only save in certain milestones throughout the story or when you go to bed.
Yeah.
But I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere. I don't have a sleeping bag. I'm not going to bed. So it was really frustrating, these kind of bugs, because I think there's actually a lot of good systems at work in this game. There's an insanity bar or a meter or several meters, which all play into your character's psyche. And I like that in a survival game. I think Green Hell probably did it best because it was a little bit easier to understand. Yeah. But this game, it does have those systems there. It's just a matter of that I'm not quite finding out how to use it properly. Getting some of these canned food, you have to break that open with a knife. You know, there's a lot of different ideas, survival-wise, that work really well. But then it's held back by some of these just underbaked sections. I've had game-breaking bugs, you've had game-breaking bugs, and when it works, even, I don't know if you caught this, but some of the wolves, some of the bears, the sprites as they move around get all glitched, all buggy. It seems like the AI pathing
start shaking.
Yeah,
it's shaking.
Something's not
really
quite
angry
working.
at ya. Yes.
Well, actually, you bring that up. The sound in this game is all very interesting as well. You're dealing with a lot of big open air kind of environments, and when you're playing with a headset, that does work really well. But it's a big mixed bag here.
I did enjoy the voice acting as well at the beginning, because you do get like the text to talk, so you can understand what they're saying, and the concept of what they've put into this game, if it's all working all together in conjunction with everything else, I think this will be a really good survival game, because it's got everything in this. You know, you go in there, you get a canteen, you go down by the lake, fill it up, you have your drinking water, or if you do what I did, if it's contaminated, and then you just throw up, and then you get even more dehydrated, and then you get even weaker. But the crafting thing for me is there wasn't enough resources at the very start. It said the items there I can use, and I couldn't use it until it was only later on in the game when I got past a certain point in a cave where there's a bear. And the issue I had was I didn't have anything to attack it with, so I got mauled quite a lot. I died, respawned back in the cave with the bear behind me, which mauled me again, and then took me back to the next save point. But then when I did get past the bear and got onto this rock, which I was out of the way, I had to get some water, but I couldn't get it without dying, so I quit the game and reloaded again, carried it on. Then it took me to the next part of the game, which then I could use the inventory and see what I have and start crafting things or making fiber and those kind of things. So the game is going to get good, but these bugs at the beginning was putting me off a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty accurate description there. And we're not going to put a score on this one, but if you can't tell by now, there is a lot of complication to it. It is what could be a good game. There's a lot of really good parts here. But it's almost like it tried to hit the ground running and face planted. I'm going to keep my eye on this one because I think there are enough elements here. This could work really well if all these come together, but unfortunately in its state right now, I cannot recommend. The game has potential, but it's just too painful right now.
And I'm with you exactly. Not recommend. Give it a little bit more time, get these issues sorted out, and they could have a really good game that I'll be very happy to jump back into and give it a proper score. But in the state it's in now, with all the bugs, the glitches, it's almost unplayable.
Honey, I'm waiting. Did you feel it? Wonderful, isn't it? Danny? Do you have to go?